This story opens in Harbor Point, a coastal town waking to a gray morning. A tow truck idling beside a battered Ford named Gracie. Inside the Anchor Diner, a woman with flour on her hands steps into the wind. Her name is May Carter, mother, neighbor. Quiet as prayer and strong as rope. Beneath her truck seat rests a small metal secret with a trident stamped deep. A promise her son left behind today. You will see how a town remembers itself, how a developer learns what community really means, and how a single coin can weigh more than a stack of papers. You will feel the wind off the water. You will hear the chain tighten, and you will understand why some lines are worth holding before we begin. I want to meet you. Where in the world are you watching? Tell me your city or country in the comments. And if someone in your life once stood up for you, type their first name so we can honor them together. Settle in. Breathe with me. Count 4 in and 6 out. The clock is ticking toward noon, and courage is about to step into the light. They tried to tow her truck. The chains snapped tight, and half the town seemed to pause mid-breath, because word in Harbor Point was that May Carter was trouble only when you forgot who she once was, and what she still carried under that front seat, a small metal badge with a trident stamped deep, the kind that means a promise kept even when the waves run high. Dawn rolled in low and gray along the Carolina coast. Gulls carving lazy circles over the Anchor Diner, the kind of place where coffee pours before you sit, where fishermen leave cash and take hope. May stepped out the side door with a crate of eggs balanced on one hip, apron still dusted with flour, and she froze at the sound of a ratchet clicking, the hard voice of a winch pulling something precious toward loss in the cracked asphalt. A tow rig from Tide Star Recovery backed into the slot like a shark nosing a pier. Colton Reed at the controls, jaw like a steel hinge, Junior Mays winding. The chain, both following a printed order tucked in a clipboard sleeve, a neat letter signed by Victor Hawley of Franklin Development, who stood across the lot in a crisp jacket. Phone against his ear, smile thin as a blade. The lot behind the diner had been sold. New rules had been posted, 2-hour parking, and no exceptions. And the old Ford that everyone knew as Gracie had overstayed by a night and a sunrise May set. The egg crate on the tailgate, and lifted a hand. Voice steady. Please put that down, she said. I need the truck for deliveries, hot meals to the pier, and the VA home. Give me until noon and I will move her clean. Colton kept the cable tight. Orders are orders, ma'am. Junior glanced at the chalk tires, at the handwritten ticket on the windshield, at the town he had grown up in, and he shifted his weight like someone trying to stand on 2 boats drifting apart. A couple of early regulars stepped out with paper cups. Tom Walker, retired rescue swimmer, shoulders still straight, and Sky Alvarez, the morning server whose laugh carried like bells on good days. They hovered near the paint line, while Officer Lena Ruiz rolled in from the street, lights off, hat low. Her first year in town, her first year learning what the diner meant. I am here to keep this peaceful, she said. Eyes moving from May to Victor to the tow rig. The paper looks clean, but I am open to solutions if anyone has one May breath slow. The way her boy Luke had taught her back when he came home between deployments. Count to 4 in, count to 6. Out, let the storm hit your body like rain on a roof, not like glass in your lungs. Luke Carter, son of the diner and of the salt wind. Navy SEAL with a grin like morning, gone now for 3 years, but never really gone, not in the diner where. His team photo hung beneath the pie menu, not in the truck where his hands had once changed the oil with a thrift. Store wrench Victor tucked his phone away and finally crossed the lot, the smile now a courtroom kind. Ms. Carter, I respect your community work, he said, but rules keep towns alive. If I make one exception, people will think I play favorites. The car must go. He gestured to the new signpost. Fresh white paint and hard black letters, a thing that said progress but sounded like eviction. Behind him, a couple of his men watched the scene from a shiny SUV. Sunglasses at sunrise, a choice. All its own. May did not raise her voice. She did not plead. She did not tell him about the freezer she had fixed herself last night, or the church pantry she was stocking by 10. Instead, she opened the driver door, the hinge complaining like an old friend, and she reached for the glove box to pull the registration. The latch stuck, stubborn as habit. She leaned in farther, hand sliding along the seat seam where cloth had frayed to soft threads, and she felt the strap Luke had stitched beneath the cushion, the one only she knew about, the one that hid what she kept for courage when words would not hold. Tom called her name. May, let me talk to the boys. I know Colton. I pulled him out of a rip current when he was 12. We can find a way. But May shook her head. Not yet. Kindness is lighter when you let people carry it by choice, she murmured, and her fingers found the snap. The little button popped. A small leather pouch slid into her palm. Time went quiet like the ocean at slack tide. She drew the zipper back and felt metal cool as morning. It was the coin her son had pressed into her hand the last time he sat in that driver's seat. A SEAL Team Challenge coin, trident and pistol and anchor. Scarred at the edges, heavy with memory, Junior had climbed into the cab on the passenger side to set the steering safe for the pull. When he reached under to check the brake cable, his knuckles brushed the other side of that hidden strap, and the coin slipped free, rolled across the floor mat like a dropped wedding ring. It clinked against his boot and settled, face up to the light that filtered through the windshield. Junior stared, breath-catching. He knew that emblem. His older brother had worn it on a chain tucked beneath his shirt. The same brother who still woke shaking some nights, and still stood taller when he held that coin hold up. Junior said, voice not to Colton, not to Victor, but to the space itself, to the part of the morning that could still be changed. He reached down and picked up the coin with both hands as if it might break. He looked at May, at the photograph taped by the speedometer. A young man in desert dust with eyes like this. Coastline, is this yours, ma'am? He asked. May nodded, and the town heard the yes nod as an answer, but as a door opening, Colton eased off the winch without being told. Cable softening with a small sigh, Victor took a step in, confusion bending his mouth. This item does not change the ordinance, he said, but the sentence trailed, because he saw how people were looking at the coin, and at May. He saw Tom with his jaw tight, Skye with her hands folded like prayer, Officer Ruiz with a crease between her brows that had not been there a minute ago. Sometimes an object is not an object. Sometimes it is a key, and sometimes it is a mirror. May closed her hand around the coin, and her shoulders settled, not in defeat, in readiness. She had not planned to show this, had not planned to ask for anything. But if the fight had come to her doorstep, then she would fight like Luke had taught her, not with anger, with clarity. She lifted her chin toward Victor and the tow crew. Listen, she said, this truck is not just metal and paint. It is a line between what we say we value and what we actually do. I will get you a solution that honors both the ticket and the town. Give me until noon, or we all learn what we are made of in front of the people who will remember. The gulls wheeled. The coffee steamed in paper cups gone cold. Lena Ruiz glanced at the time and at the faces. She had joined the badge because her mother told her justice was just love with sleeves rolled up. She touched the brim of her hat and spoke low. Miss Carter, if you can put something on the table by noon that moves this forward, I will stand with it. Colton rubbed the back of his neck. Junior nodded without words. And Victor, calculating, checked the sky like weather, might help him choose between power and wisdom. Slid the coin back into the pouch, slipped it under the seat, and patted the cushion once like you would calm a skittish horse. Then she turned to the gathered circle and named what was at stake. If Gracie goes today, she said, we lose the morning meal for the pier hands, the food bank run will stall, and the veterans at Harbor House we'll wait another week for mattresses we promised. But this is bigger than a truck. This is about a developer who thinks a town is a set of numbers, and a town that has to remember it is a family. Give me the morning, and I will show you we know how to act like one. The chain lay quiet on the asphalt. The wind shifted, and somewhere out on the water, a bell buoy chimed. Far and faithful, May wiped her palms on her apron, squared her shoulders, and made a plan. She would gather the people who still remembered how to move as one, the ones Luke called quiet professionals, not because they were soldiers, because they were neighbors who stayed until the job was done. She pointed to Tom and Sky, to Officer Ruiz, who tried to hide a smile, to Junior, whose eyes were bright and guilty, to Colton, who nodded like a man braced to change his mind, and even to Victor, because redemption was a door that sometimes opened both ways. And then she said the thing that shifted the morning from argument to mission. Meet me back here at 11:30. Bring whatever you have that makes you strong. A tool, a story, a name we can call. We are going to prove this truck belongs to more than one person. And by the time the hands of the clock reach noon, Harbor Point will remember who it is. By 8, the diner felt like a command post, not loud, just focused. The coffee line moved in a steady loop, hands sliding muffins into bags, voices low and kind. May spread a county map on the counter and drew a finger along the blocks around. Anchor Diner, here is what we are going to do, she said. We split our strength. We do 3 things at once. We earn time. We fix what is broken. We make it impossible for anyone to say this truck is only one person's problem. Tom Walker took the first job without asking logistics. He pulled out his battered flip phone, because the old ways still work. Called the harbor master. Called Shirley Nguyen at Harbor House, who ran the veterans' home with a spine of steel and a heart you could lean against. We are moving those mattresses today, he told her, not next week. We will need the ramp and a dolly crew by 11. Shirley paused, then said the thing Tom knew she would say. Say when, and I will bring every hand I have. I will bring B.O. McCready, too. He is 83 and walks slow, but he lifts like the tide. When a neighbor needs him, Sky Alvarez took comes and kindness. That was how she named it. She wrote it on a sticky note and put it on her apron. She pulled a chalkboard into the window and in big white letters wrote, Help us keep Gracie delivering. She opened the diner tablet and started a small fundraiser. Not loud, just honest. Pay the ticket, fuel the runs, $3 buys eggs for the pier crew. She texted Eli Chun, a high school senior who edited her flyers for fun and coded like he was weaving nets in digital water. Eli rolled in on his bike within minutes, hair swooped by the wind. He set up a QR code that linked to a page with May's promise and Luke's photo. He added a live counter that clicked forward each time a neighbor tapped their phone. Officer Lena Ruiz took the law. She called the county clerk, Marion Pritchard, who knew every ordinance by number and by story. Lena asked about temporary exemptions. For charitable deliveries, she asked about signage compliance, about posted hours, and the distance between sign and first tow. Marion hummed like a motor, thinking, and said a thing that lifted the room. There is an old provision for community service vehicles. She said, not police or fire, just designated by the city for specific missions. It was written in the 70s. When the fishermen ran food to families cut off by storms, it has not been used in years, but it still lives. If you can get the city manager to sign a temporary designation, and if you are actively loading and unloading. Tow is paused while the activity is in motion. Junior Mays kept rubbing the coin in his pocket like it was a prayer stone. He drifted to the side and called his brother Luis, the one who never talked much about the teams, the one who sometimes drove down on quiet Sundays and sat by the water until sunset. Junior told him about the coin, about May, about the tow order, and Victor Hall. On the other end of the line, Lise did not yell. He breathed, the way he had been taught. Then he said, "When you stand by a mother who carries our emblem, you stand straight. I cannot be there, but my voice can. Tell them we do not leave our own. And tell that developer that strength looks different than he imagines." Colton Reed stood with Tom by the map. He was not a villain. He was a paycheck and a habit. He had a daughter who played softball and a mortgage that did not bend. He looked at the printed tow order and saw the gaps that nobody had looked for. The sign was posted last night. The chalk mark was made after closing. The ordinance required clear notice for 24 hours before first enforcement. He pointed at the timestamps on Officer Ruiz's photos. "Careful, as if he were deactivating a trap. It is not clean," he said. "We can make that our bridge to noon." Victor Hawley watched the diner fill with a tide he did not understand. He took calls near the window, his voice turning flat. "Armand, we need this lot cleared for the surveyors." "Yes, I know the optics, but the rule must hold." He called a second tow company, sent for a flatbed with higher torque. He told his assistant to bring a stack of fresh notices. He told himself he was not the antagonist. He was a man keeping a project alive in a town that feared its future. It sounded fine until he looked at May and the coin in Junior's hands. And something in him felt like a nail hit sideways at 9:30. Priya Singh stepped in from her marine shop with grease on her knuckles and a grin like a mechanic who loves a challenge. She had grown up fixing cracked hulls and trusting seawater to tell the truth. She slid under Gracie with a light and tapped. The oil pan listened, slid back out. "You have a battery that is more hope than charge, May, and a belt that sings when it should hum. I can swap the battery and dress the belt before 11. But I need a ride to my shop and back." Sky held up the keys to her little hatchback and said, "Get in by 10:15. The QR code had ticked past what the ticket would cost twice over. Dollar gifts mostly, names popping like buoys on the screen. Miss Ruth from the bait shop, the Lopez twins from the middle school robotics club, Coach Daniels who had lost his wife last winter and found a way to keep showing up for kids." Sky printed the donor list and taped it near the register, not to brag, to remind everyone that they were doing this together. A low murmur moved through the diner, not gossip. Resolve May slipped back into the truck and reached under the seat again. She found the strap Luke had sewn, the one that had held the coin safe for 3 years. Her fingers brushed fabric and came away with a small patch, trident and pistol, and anchor on navy cloth, the edges frayed, the stitches neat. Behind the patch was a spiral notebook, weatherproof paper, dense handwriting in ink that had not faded. She opened to the first page, the title written simple, "After Action," and below it a sentence that Luke had underlined, "Leave no one behind, no friend, no stranger, not if you can still move your hands and your heart." She read that line to the room, voice steady. Then she set the notebook on the counter and let people touch it if they wished. B.O. McCready arrived in a Harbor House van with 2 younger vets, Eddie Tran, who joked too much to hide the ache, and Rosa Martinez, who had been a Navy welder and could cut a door into a ship if you gave her a torch and a minute. B.O. set his palm on the notebook like a benediction, then said, "What am I lifting and where?" Tom pointed to the mattresses, to the crates of pantry staples, to the stack of used but good walkers that needed new tennis balls on their legs. The work sorted itself like a school of fish. Finding its shape, Officer Ruiz stepped outside to meet the city manager, Kendra Bell, who had hustled over in running shoes and a blazer. Lena explained the old community service clause, showed her Marion's note. Kendra frowned at the weight of it, at the risk, and looked at the faces through the window and at the truck with its patched seat and its purpose. She wrote the words on city letterhead at the hood of her car. Temporary designation for charitable delivery, valid until dusk, conditional on active loading, conditional on documented need. She signed it, hand firm, and said, "Do not make me regret this, but also, thank you for giving me a reason to be proud at." 11 A second tow rig turned onto the block. Flatbed high, chrome bright, a driver chewing a toothpick and wearing the sort of boredom that men put on when they have done too many hard things they did not want to think about. Victor stepped out to meet him, folder in hand, but found his path slowed by people carrying boxes, by the sight of a police officer filming a lawful loading, by a city manager's letter held up to the morning like a lantern. He swallowed something that tasted like pride, mixed with saltpeter, rolled back in with a new battery, slid it in like a heart set right, tightened the belt until it sang the right song, turned the key, and Gracie coughed, then caught. The engine settled into a patient idle, not young, not perfect, but ready. May put her palm on the dash and whispered a thank you toward a boy who had learned to drive right there. Tom shaped the loading into a rhythm, veterans to the heavy things, teenagers to the boxes. Sky at the clipboard checking what went where. B.O. called the cadence like a work song, slow and kind, so that no one rushed and no one tripped. By 11:30, the lot was a picture of motion with purpose. The stack of mattresses stood like white sails ready to leave harbor. Pantry crates were tied. Walkers lined up like silver herons. Officer Ruiz's body cam blinked a small red light as she narrated calmly. Loading in progress. Charitable designation in effect. No impediment to traffic, no hazard. Colton stood by the tow control, ready to throw his weight in either direction. Junior held the coin without hiding it, and May climbed onto the tailgate to see the whole of it. She saw the faces, the hands, the hush that falls when people realize they are part of something worth remembering. Victor stopped 3 paces from her, folder slack in his grip. He looked at the work, at the letter, at the coin, at the faces of people who were not angry, just clear, and the wind changed in him a little. Not enough yet, but enough to notice, he said. You have until noon. And May nodded. No more and no less. We will be done by noon. And when we are going to talk about what a rule is for, and who it is meant to lift. He did not answer, but he did not turn away. By 11:35, the rhythm sharpened, like a drum line you feel in your ribs. Every lift and handoff set to the quiet Count B.O. kept under his breath. The lot had become a braid of motion. Veterans moving mattresses in pairs. Teenagers ferrying pantry crates. Sky calling out destinations in a voice that somehow sounded like sunlight in an overcast morning. Priya double-checking the new battery lugs and tucking a spare serpentine belt behind the seat. Eli kneeling by the curb with a portable printer he had borrowed from the school lab, feeding in vinyl as he laid out big block letters that read Community Service Vehicle, Ordinance 74 subsection C, temporary designation. Officer Ruiz stood where everyone could see her, body cam. Recording, city letter in a clear sleeve on her chest, her voice steady as tide, loading in progress, designation in effect. All movements safe and lawful. The words were not for the tow crew alone. They were for fear, which shrinks when you speak around it. The second flatbed idled at the corner like a bull in a chute. Driver chewing slow, eyes unreadable, behind him. A black SUV eased across the lane and angled toward the diner exit. A private blockade with vanity plates and windows, tinted to legal limit. Victor's assistant Armand stepped out, frame lean and expensive. He held a packet of papers high as if paper were thunder. Emergency notice of enforcement, he said. Voice pitched to reach the crowd. Surveyors require access by noon. Failure to comply will trigger penalties. He did not say whose penalties. And he did not say that a judge still had to nod for the notice to have teeth. He did not say it, but Lena did, firm and calm. This has no force until signed, she said, and it is 11:38. She lifted her ticket book with the same calm, and that SUV is obstructing ingress and egress. Move it now or accept the citation you already earned. Armand's jaw worked. He slid back behind the wheel. The SUV rolled back 2 lengths, not in. apology, but May climbed down from the tailgate with Luke's notebook tucked to her side. She opened to a page creased by a tear that had dried years ago. Not salt water, a mother's. The line at the top was in her boy's hand. When you cannot carry your whole grief, carry the part that helps someone else stand. She read it aloud. Not loud, only clear, and the room that was not a room breathed as one. Even Colton's hands slowed over the toe control, like he was holding something fragile that you could not see. Junior stood with the coin cupped in both palms, thumb running. The edge without knowing it, his phone buzzed. A message from his brother Louis. A single sentence that felt like a hand on his shoulder. Tell Miss Carter that a team is not the men on a roster. It is the town that refuses to let a mother carry weight alone. Eli brought the vinyl signs. Still warm, and Rosa Martinez from Harbor. House set them on the doors with a squeegee and a patience that made the edges disappear. Priya clipped an amber light to the dash, an old one from her shop, and checked the hazard flashers. Tom set the route like a coxswain setting a race. First stop Harbor House for mattresses, then the pantry drop at St. Bridget, then Pier 3 with breakfast plates that Sky and Miss Ruth had stacked in insulated carriers. No wasted motion, no empty miles. He posted the route on the chalkboard by the window, so anyone waiting would know where to meet them if more hands were needed. Inside the diner, Miss Ruth opened a drawer and took out a small box wrapped in navy cloth. She had not shown it to anyone. In years, inside lay a patch like the one May had found, and a photo of her brother from long ago, unit crest bright. She pressed the patch into May's hands. For luck, she said, for remembering. May pinned it to the visor with a straight pin from Sky's apron, a small flag that meant more than thread. Victor watched all this with a face that tried to stay unmoved. He told himself that sentiment was not a policy. He looked at the clock and saw 11:47. He felt the edge of a truth he did not like, that he had entered a place where rules were meant to lift people, not just manage them at the curb. Two surveyors in neon vests drifted closer. One older with weathered cheeks named Darius Cole. One younger with nervous eyes named Hannah Price. They were not villains either. They were a pair assigned a job. Darius kept his distance and spoke low to Lena. We need 3 spots marked for a soil core. He said, can we work the north edge while they finish? Lena measured with her gaze and her training. Nodded once yes, as long as your rig does not pinch the exit and you keep a lane. Darius tipped his cap. Thank you, officer, he said. And to May, he added, my old man took meals off that tailgate when the cannery laid him off. He never forgot. Hannah looked at the coin in Junior's hands, and then at May, eyes soft. My cousin came back different from his tour. She said, he eats breakfast here because it is the one place he does not feel strange. I thought you should know at 11:50 the flatbed driver revved once. A warning or a habit. Colton stepped between the rigs like a man choosing a side. Palms up, we are paused by law, he said, voice steady. He glanced at Victor, at Armand, then at May. He had been hired to enforce an order, but no one had hired him to be unkind. He looked down at the printout with the wrong timestamp on it and wondered why he had not seen it first. Victor took a step toward him, the kind that managers use when they forget that people have names, then stopped, remembering Lena's presence, remembering cameras on phones, remembering that maybe the ground had moved under his feet and he should pay attention. May slid behind the wheel, the seat familiar as an old hymn. She breathed in slow the way Luke had taught her. She did not pray for victory. She prayed for right action, for steady hands, for a town to remember itself. Sky climbed into the passenger seat with the clipboard. Tom and B.O. took the first mattress into the bed and settled it like a precious thing. Eli held the gate as if it were the flap of a tent in a storm. Priya's knuckles tapped the hood twice, a mechanic's blessing. Lena lifted the letter high and spoke for the record. Community service designation in effect. Vehicle departing for active delivery. All movements lawful. The words were dry. The meaning was not Armand edged the SUV forward again. Not enough to block. Enough to disagree. And then a thing happened that no ordinance could plan for. The pier crew arrived in a loose pack, boots scuffing, caps low. Men and women who had been waiting on breakfast that might be late. They did not chant. They did not shove. They simply took positions like puzzle pieces. 2 at the nose of the truck to spot, 2 at the exit to guide, 3 more lining the lane. To keep curious cars from crowding, Darius and Hannah shifted their tripod without being asked. The lane opened like a mouth, deciding to speak truth. Victor felt the moment slipping and reached for it the only way he knew. With threat wrapped as reason, he called across the lot. If you leave that space, you acknowledge the new parking rules. If you return out of time, you will be towed without further notice. May looked at him through the windshield and nodded. We are leaving to keep promises, she said. We will return with more of them kept. If you tow us then, you tow a town that. We'll be watching. The words landed like anchors. Quiet and certain, at 11:57 Gracie rolled, engine rumbling like a story being told by someone who has earned the right to speak. Hazard lights clicking their calm rhythm. May turned the wheel and the truck eased toward the exit. A flatbed driver watched and did not move. Colton stepped back and did not flinch. Armand's hands tightened on the steering wheel and then loosened. Because there are lines you do not cross if you want to live in a place and be able to look people in the eye, Lena walked beside the driver window. Pace matched, letter visible, voice low, steady as a metronome. You are clear to merge. You are clear to serve. You are clear to show them what this town is made of. As the truck nosed past the property line, a gull cut a white arc overhead. The first drop of a noon shower touched the hood and vanished. The bell buoy out on the channel sounded. A single note. Harbor Point held its breath, as if waiting for a verdict. Victor stood very still, a man at the center of a circle he did not draw. And for the first time since morning, his eyes left the clock and rested on faces, on hands, on a coin in the palm of a tow tech who looked more like a son than an adversary. And he felt something unfamiliar, a question he had not asked himself in years. What is this for? And who am I in it? Gracie rolled through Harbor Point with the quiet confidence of an old workhorse. Lena's cruiser tucked behind like a shepherd, hazard lights whispering their rhythm, the noon sky heavy with a thin rain that felt more like blessing than bother. May kept Luke's notebook on the bench seat, one hand on the wheel, one on the edge of the page like a sailor keeping a finger on a chart. Sky read the route out loud, calm and sure. Harbor House first, SD Bridget Pantry second, Pier 3 last. Keep the promise, keep the time, keep the town moving at Harbor House. The front steps were a tide of motion. Shirley Nguyen waiting with the door propped, Eddie Tran and Rosa Martinez making space through. The lobby like a practice team. B.O. McCready tapped the tailgate twice, and the mattress lift began. 2 at a time, easy and safe. Hallway walls lined with photos of uniforms and weddings and fishing trips. The kind of frames that make strangers. Family. May carried the first set with B.O. The weight honest, the purpose lighter. Shirley pointed with a clipboard. That room, then the corner suite, then Jimmy Caldwell's place. He has been on a cot since the roof leak in spring. Jimmy waved from the doorway with a grin that still. Remembered football and a heart surgery that did not take his laughing. The second room, a nurse named Alana with a soft Tennessee voice tugged a fitted sheet with the precision of a field medic. She looked up at May and touched her arm. My husband served with a unit that carried that same trident. She said, we kept his coin in a bowl by the door. It made the house feel guarded. Thank you for bringing strength into this hall today. May swallowed and smiled, the kind that knows a shared tongue without needing the same story. She slipped the notebook onto Jimmy's dresser, open to the line Luke had underlined. Leave no one behind. Jimmy read it slowly, then put his palm on the words like they were a warm stone. He said he would sleep better, knowing a promise was in the room with him. Eli hustled behind with a roll of neon gaffer tape, marking the floor at doorways to keep the path clear. Priya checked the truck between loads, listening close. The belt hummed clean, the new battery held steady. She caught a small coolant drip that would have been trouble on a longer haul, tightened a clamp, and left a note on the dashboard for a flush after this mission. Tom kept cadence like a gentle drill master. No one rushed, no one strained alone. They finished that last mattress, just as the wall clock slid toward the thin edge of noon outside. Lena stood under the eave and spoke into her radio with the same even tone she used when guiding traffic at a crash. Community service vehicle in. Active load, departure imminent, route to St. Bridget clear. She met May at the steps, held up the city letter with one hand, and the other she kept free. Ready to lift, ready to steady. Her badge had edges and weight, but today it felt like a neighbor's hand on a shoulder. Shirley handed May a sack of thank you cards scribbled in shaky pens by residents who had been told about the morning. May tucked them into the glove box like anchor stones she would hold later when the house was quiet. They climbed back in. Sky checked the clock and breathed. 9 minutes to spare if the streets play kind. May nodded and eased forward. The Harbor House porch crew lined the walk like a silent honor guard. The rain ticked a little harder. The wipers answered. The town's one train clanged across Cedar Street 3 blocks ahead, and the crossing lights began to flash. Colton's. Old warning lived in May's ear. The freight runs slow this week. Detour along Bayview, and you will beat it. May clicked the turn signal and took Bayview, a narrow run along the marsh grass, where egrets stood like porcelain. A school bus waited at a corner for a crossing guard in a yellow slicker. The guard spotted May and raised the stop sign higher, clearing a lane with a smile that said, "We all have missions today, St." Bridget's pantry sat in a brick church that had sheltered people from storms and from lonely nights. Pastor Miguel met them in shirt sleeves with a rolling cart and a prayer in his eyes. The basement held shelves that had seen boom and bust and still found a way to fill. The air smelled like cardboard and hope. Sky called the crate count 20. 4 staples, 12 fresh, 6 hygiene kits. Eli scanned the QR that linked donors to the pantry's needs in real time. A small bell on the church door rang with every person who stepped in out of the rain to help. Maya from the robotics club stacked canned beans in perfect towers. Coach Daniels carried sacks of rice like he was back in the weight room. Laughter moved like a current, and even in the rush, it did not spill halfway through the unload. A white sedan nosed into the alley. City code enforcement in block letters on the side. The driver leaned a forearm on the open window. A man named Curtis Vale, who carried the tired posture of someone used to being disliked. He held a clipboard and asked for a permit number. His voice more automatic than mean. Lena showed the letter again. Explained the clause, Marion's note, Kendra's signature. Curtis read, blinked slow, then looked past the paper at the scene, at the crates, at Pastor Miguel, thanking 3 teenagers by name, at May carrying a box strapped tight with rope. Someone had cut from a boat. He cleared his throat and said, "I can call this a public safety assist and keep it moving. You are in compliance when in motion. I will mark the alley as an active loading zone for the hour." He pulled a magnetized sign from his trunk and slapped it to a pole. He did not smile, but the set of his shoulders eased. A man relieved to find. A reason to help the twist landed a breath later. Eli's printer chirped a low battery warning and died mid-label. And almost at the same time, Sky's phone vibrated with a message from Priya's shop. A parts supplier had called, a recall notice on the exact replacement battery in Gracie. Most had no issue. A rare batch failed under heavy accessory load. Hazard lights and wipers qualified as heavy in a drizzle like this. Priya met May's eyes and nodded once. "We can mitigate," she said. cut non-essential draws, run in low idle between stops, keep the alternator happy. I will swap in a secondary jumper if the dash dims. It was not panic. It was the frank acceptance that a mission always meets a wrinkle, and that a team unfolds around it. They adjusted on the fly. Eli switched to writing Sharpie labels with block art that Maya turned into arrows. Sky kept comes short to save her battery. Lena ran her radio. On low, May clicked the hazards only for merges, and kept a light touch on the throttle to keep the needle out of the red. Pastor Miguel pressed a small silver medal into May's palm. A saint with travel in his bones, for the road between what is and what should be, he said, and there was a warmth in his voice that made the basement feel like a kitchen, like a safe. Harbor on a bad night when they climbed back in. A figure stood by the passenger door in a rain jacket with the hood back. A man in his 40s with quiet eyes and a scar that curved like a comma near his jaw. He introduced himself in a voice made for calm rooms. "Name is Owen Blair," he said. "I served with Luke for one deployment. I live 2 towns over now, Junior." Called me. He said the coin was out in the open, and the town had answered. Luke saved me once when a door went wrong. Today is a good day to bring that debt home. He lifted a duffel and opened it just enough to show tools, jumper pack, flares, a tow strap that had seen desert and sea. Nothing loud, everything useful. May stared at him like sunlight breaking. She did not cry. She nodded and said, "Welcome." Home they rolled out with Owen's pickup sliding behind Lena's cruiser, a small convoy that looked like purpose stitched from spare parts. The rain eased to a fine mist. Time tightened. 5 minutes to spare if the pier went smooth. Sky checked. The last line on the route. Pier 3 breakfast plates. Fishermen waiting with hands that do not like to be still. May kissed her fingers and touched the visor patch Miss Ruth had given. A habit she did not know she had until today. The town around them seemed to lean forward, as if buildings and sidewalks could watch, as if the chapel bell and the diner sign and the gulls all wanted to see how this ends. Pier 3 smelled like diesel and salt and frying batter from the bait shack. Gulls arguing overhead, ropes twitching on cleats as the tide turned. May eased Gracie to the yellow line painted at the edge. Hazard lights off to save the charge. Engine idling just high enough to keep the alternator honest. Sky counted the insulated carriers. 24 plates tucked tight. Coffee urns sloshing with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. The breakfast crew waited under the awning. Deke Morales with a shoulder scar from a winch accident. Nora Pike with wind-burned cheeks and a laugh that usually arrived before her words. Calvin Jessup with a limp that matched the tide, their faces softening when they saw. May's apron and the steam when a lid cracked and the air filled with eggs and grits and pepper. A temporary barrier had appeared across the outer slip. A ribbon of plastic chain and a sign that read restricted during soil sampling. A woman in a hard hat stood beside it. Bright vest, clipboard tucked under one arm. She introduced herself as Marla Keene, site safety supervisor, her voice even. "And not unkind. Vehicles are off the deck today," she said. "You can unload to the line. My crew will carry across once we set mats." May nodded. "That will do." She said, "We are not here to break rules. We are here to keep people standing Priya." Popped the hood and checked the belt again. The rain had turned to a mist that hid in eyelashes. The dash lights pulsed once in a way she did not like. She looked at Owen, and he already had the jumper pack in his hands. He clipped it to the terminals like a medic setting a line, not to start the truck, to buffer the draw. He looped a tow strap through the front frame to a dock bollard to keep the truck from creeping when the bed took weight. Quiet readiness. No swagger. Owen glanced at May and gave a small nod. "We are steady," he said. "We will hold the line until..." The last cup is poured. They formed a human chain without speech. Bio and Rosa lifting carriers to Sky and Eli, who passed to Nora and Deke, who slid them along a row of bait coolers that Marla's crew had flipped into a makeshift table, past her. Miguel showed up out of breath, with paper cups and a prayer he layered into the work like a baseline. Lena stood at the corner with the letter in its sleeve and her radio at her shoulder, calling in the scene as if it were music. Active unloading, all participants safe, temporary safety mats laid, no slip hazards. She did not have to say dignity. Present, but it was there in every handoff, halfway through. A young deckhand named Benny swayed and sat hard on an upturned bucket, his face gray, breath shallow. Sky moved without thinking, kneeling, hand on his wrist, the count fast and trained. From watching her empt friends drill behind the diner, she fished a glucose gel from her apron, the kind she kept for long shifts and fishermen who forget to eat when the nets run hot. She eased it into his cheek and talked him back like you would talk a skittish colt. Slow, kind, present, Benny blinked and color returned like the sun clipping. The edge of a cloud, he stood, embarrassed and grateful. He took a cup of coffee with both hands as if it were a medal. May looked at Sky and felt her chest ache in a way that was not pain. It was legacy. It was Luke's lesson moving through a person he had never met. Victor appeared at the far end of the pier with Armand at his shoulder, and a third man in a neat raincoat whose shoes did not like wet boards. A lawyer or a consultant, the kind, who carried a pen like a gavel. Darius Cole and Hannah Price were already there with their tripod folded. Eyes watchful, Darius gave Victor a small nod that held both respect and warning. He said softly, "Look close before you speak, sir. These plates are feeding the hands that will sign your tenant leases in a year." Victor swallowed a retort he had prepared. He watched Nora slide a carrier to Calvin with a smile that made his eyes sting. He watched Owen check the strap and the jumper, and then step back to let May pass. He watched the coin on Junior's palm catch a strip of light and throw. "Get back like a small sunrise," Armand whispered. "We should document the violation when they return." He gestured toward Gracie's plates and the line of people. Victor started to nod by habit, then stopped. Because habit had gotten him here, and here did not feel right, he took a step toward the truck, rain beating his suit shoulders. He crouched to read the temporary designation taped to the door. And as he glanced inside, his eye caught the underside of the driver's seat where the cloth had frayed and the springs showed like ribs. There, stitched into the burlap panel, was a small square of navy cloth with the trident and anchor, hand-sewn. By someone who knew what thread could hold, the SEAL Team logo tucked where no one would see it. Not for display, for remembrance. For courage where a hand might find it in the dark. Victor reached out and touched the seam with one finger, then drew his hand back like a man realizing he had rested it on a grave marker. Owen watched him, his posture open, not threatening. He said quietly, "Luke stitched that the week before we shipped. He said it helped his mother to know that wherever her hand went in that truck, she would find his promise." Victor looked up at Owen, surprised by the softness in the voice. Owen added, "Your plans may be sound, your numbers may sing, but they mean nothing if you do not account for the places where people keep their vows. We are not trying to stop your building. We are trying to make sure you build on something worth keeping." A gust swept across the deck. The plastic chain snapped at its clip and tangled itself around a crate. Marla moved like a point guard, catching it, snapping on a new clip, setting a heavy mat with her boot. She raised her voice and told her crew to spot each pass like they were catching a live net. "Team first, pride later." She grinned at May and said, "My father ran shrimp out of this pier. He used to eat off your tailgate when the engine died and you would not leave him hungry. I am not here to be your wall. I am here to be your railing." The dash lights pulsed again and faded. Priya's jaw set. She killed the cabin fan and the radio. Left only the tiny blink of the battery indicator. Owen clipped in the jumper pack and watched the amperage like a man checking a patient's pulse. "We have 2 more carriers and 3 urns," he said. "Then we should roll while she is warm." May nodded, and the chain of hands tightened. The last trays moved with a care that made time stretch. Calvin took the final urn like a father taking a newborn. He said, "Breakfast is more than food. It is a reason to start the day. Thank you for giving us one." Victor stood very still, rain dark at his collar, and thought about a softball field, where his daughter swung late and laughed anyway. He thought about an old man in a photograph on his mother's mantel, a sailor he had never met. He thought about rules that he had used as a shield and a sword, and about a coin that seemed to make strangers into a circle. Armand started to speak, and Victor raised one hand to quiet him, not in dismissal, in pause. He turned to May and said a sentence that cost him nothing and meant everything. "If you make it back to the diner before 1, I will listen. Not talk, listen." May met his gaze and answered in the same key. "If we make it back, we will bring more than words. We will bring a plan you can be proud to sign." They loaded the empty carriers. Owen unclipped the jumper and tucked it back. Priya closed the hood with a gentle touch. Lena checked the lane and the letter. Marla waved them through with a salute that felt like respect flowing both ways. The convoy pulled into the street, rain lifting into a bright gray, Harbor Point leaning forward again, as if a town could hold its breath a second time. Eli rode in the back with the tailgate down, hand on the latch, counting the seconds between the battery light, pulses the way a sailor counts lightning to know how close a storm stands. On Bayview, the school bus had finished its run. The crossing guard was gone. The train had passed and left a silence like a cleared throat. Skye looked at the clock and smiled. "We have time if we do not waste it," she said. May pressed the notebook flat with her palm. Luke's underlined line steady under her skin. "Leave no one behind," she whispered. "Not the hungry, not the stubborn, not even a man who forgot that rules are meant to lift." The diner sign came into view around the bend. The lot beyond it a field where a last choice would be made. Colton's rig sat quiet. The flatbed idled with its lights on mute. Victor's SUV tucked to the side. The crowd gathered in a half circle, like a jury that wanted to be surprised by. Grace May downshifted. The engine gave a tired shiver. The battery light blinked twice and held. Owen set his hand on the dash and spoke to the truck like a friend. "Hold 1 more minute, old girl. You have carried more than weight today. You have carried a town." Priya watched the needle and nodded. "Steady, steady." Lena keyed her radio and said, "Returning to base. Active mission complete. Designation still. In effect, all movements lawful." Her voice carried across the rain-polished street and into the lot where Victor waited with a face that had learned something since morning. The final measure would be taken now, not by noise, by what each hand chose to do next. May eased Gracie into the lot, and the battery light blinked a stubborn red. Owen lifted the jumper pack like a steadying hand. Priya leaned across the engine bay and whispered to the belt the way mechanics do when they respect a machine. The needle steadied, the idle smoothed, the crowd drew a soft breath, and the rain thinned to a silver hush. Victor stood near the chalk line, with Armand a step behind, Colton and Junior by the tow rig with their hands open, Lena at the bumper with the city letter visible, Kendra Bell and Marion Pritchard arriving together like the book and the heart of the law moving in one body. May climbed onto the tailgate, the coin warm in her fist and Luke's notebook under her arm. She looked at faces she knew and faces she did not. She looked at Victor until he met her eyes without flinching. "We made our deliveries," she said. "No one left behind at Harbor House. No shelf empty at the pantry. No plate missed at the pier. Now we finish the job here. We make a rule do the work it was meant to do." She lifted the notebook and opened to the line underlined by her son, the one that had carried them all morning. "Leave no one behind," she said, and the words settled over the lot like a flag here is our plan, she continued. Steady and plain, 1. Paint a community loading lane along the diner wall with clear stencils and bright chalk. Not a loophole, a promise. 2. Register Gracie as a standing community service vehicle with the city, so any active mission is lawful and visible. 3. Create a driver roster trained by Lena and signed off by Kendra. Names on a clipboard, so there is accountability, not chaos. 4. Put the route board in the window each morning, so no one can say they did not know where we are headed. 5. Keep the QR page public, so anyone can fuel the mission $5 at a time. 6. Post an annual ledger in the diner and at City Hall, so every box carried and every mile driven is counted and clear. She turned to Victor, and she did not raise her voice. You want to build here, she said, then build like you intend to live here. Set aside 2 morning spaces for service vehicles. Pour a pull-through bay into your plan, so delivery vans do not choke the street. Carve a public path from the sidewalk to the water that a wheelchair and a wagon can ride without fear. Honor the working hands that will rent your storefronts by giving them a place to load without being pushed out. Your timelines matter, our mornings matter. Both can stand if we choose them. To Kendra stepped forward with Marion at her shoulder. The city letter crisp in the clear sleeve. Kendra spoke the way she did when she wanted people to hear the scaffolding beneath her words, the temporary designation. Served us today, she said. I will ask council to make it permanent with a clear process and a renewal each year. Marion held up an old ordinance number on a sticky note with a wry smile. We used this in the 70s when shrimpers ran sacks. A flower after a storm, she said. It still has teeth. We will sharpen it for this century. Lena nodded and added what only a street officer can add. I will train the roster, and I will stand here every morning until the habit is stronger than the argument. This is not special treatment. This is a community tool used in daylight. Victor looked at the tow order in his hand and then at the coin. In Maze, he breathed in the slow way he had seen Owen do. He set the folder on the hood of his SUV and spoke like a man rearranging the furniture inside his chest. I pushed hard without listening, he said. I am sorry. I am withdrawing the tow request and rescinding the immediate enforcement notices. He turned to Armand and the flatbed driver and to Colton and Junior. Stand down, he said. Then he faced May again. I will meet you tomorrow with my architect, and we will mark the service bay on the plan. 2 morning spaces are yours. We will fund line paint and stencils and a durable sign so no one has to guess. And if you will allow it, I would like to underwrite the battery, the belts, and a year of fuel for your roots, not as penance. As partnership, the lot answered without cheering. The answer came as hands reaching, as shoulders loosening, as Sky whisper laughing and wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand, as Tom clapping B.O. on the shoulder like 2 sailors watching a storm pass, as Darius and Hannah rolling their tripod to measure the new bay lines with quiet satisfaction, as Marla taking a paint roller from Eli and saying she had always wanted to lay down a straight stripe that would mean something, as Pastor Miguel lifting his palms and offering a blessing that felt like a soft blanket laid across a tired room. Junior stepped to May with the coin cradled like a small son. I held this for courage, he said. It belongs under your seat again. May opened the strap Luke had stitched and slid the coin home. Then she reached under the cushion and peeled back the navy patch with the trident, just enough to feel the threads. She looked at Victor and nodded toward the visor where Miss Ruth's patch lay pinned. We will keep our promises under the seat. And in plain sight, she said. Both kinds matter. Victor swallowed and surprised himself by smiling, small and real. He asked if he could buy breakfast for the crew, and May told him he could buy breakfast for the town. If he came back with a shovel when it was time to pour that service bay, Kendra signed a fresh copy of the designation and handed it to Lena. Marion wrote the council docket number on May's chalkboard with her careful librarian script. Owen coiled the tow strap and set it in the bed. Priya wiped her hands on a shop rag and tapped the hood twice in salute. Colton ate the control and the tow cable curled like a snake deciding to sleep. The flatbed driver tipped 2 fingers from his cap and said he liked a day that ended with people looking each other in the eye. Armin tucked his pen away and took off his sunglasses because the sky was brighter now and because faces deserved to be seen. They ate right there from paper plates and cardboard clamshells, shrimp and grits and cornbread that steamed like forgiving weather. The surveyors leaned against their rig and told jokes that made Deep Arc a laugh. Nora showed Hannah how to tie a knot that will never slip. Calvin led a little boy from the Thay Robotics Club climb into the cab and honk the horn with a gentle hand on his wrist. Pastor Miguel broke a piece of cornbread in half and pressed it into Victor's palm the way a father does when he wants a son to remember a simple truth about sharing. Above them, the diner sign buzzed its soft electric hum, and a gull wrote a clean arc in the sky like punctuation made of flight before they broke. May lifted the notebook one more time. She wrote a fresh line beneath Luke's, "Leave no one behind." She added, "Especially not the people who forgot for a minute how to be with their neighbors." She tore the page and handed it to Kendra for the council record. Then she tore a second page with the same words and pressed it into Victor's hand. He folded it carefully and placed it in his suit jacket, like a man tucking a photograph where he could feel it when the day went rough. Sky snapped a picture of the painted lane with Eli's vinyl letters catching a slice of sun. She posted it to the QR page, and the counter ticked forward like a heartbeat choosing hope. By late afternoon, the loading lane had dried to a clean stripe, the stencil clear. Community service vehicle in letters big enough for strangers to read. Lena stood with Junior and Colton and taught hand signals that made the work look like a harbor crew balancing a tide. Miss Ruth taped the donor list inside the window and left a pen for names. Owen drew a small outline of the trident on the inside of the glove box where only a hand in need would find it. Priya scheduled a coolant flush and a new belt. Tom posted a route for the weekend that included a stop at the softball field where Victor's daughter played, line chalks and water coolers, and a promise to cheer loud and kind evenings settled without drama. The diner lights put a warm square. On the street, the bell buoy out in the channel spoke its patient note. Victor walked the edge of the lot with Kendra and traced the bay lines with his shoe. He asked her how much a bench would cost if it were set by the path to the water, a bench with a small brass plate that said the line Luke wrote. Kendra told him a number and said she knew a welder who could make the plate without fuss. Rosa lifted her hand from across the lot and nodded. She had a torch and a steady eye and a reason when May finally slid into the driver's seat to take Gracie home. She put her hand under the cushion and touched the coin and the patch. She touched the visor where Miss Ruth's emblem pinned the light. She felt the truck like a living thing, tired and proud. She looked at the lane that now held her place and at the people who had made it real. She turned the key, and the engine answered like a friend. The town did not cheer. The town simply went on with its work, lighter than it had been in the morning, steadier than it had been yesterday, ready for tomorrow. And Harbor Point remembered who it was, a place where rules lift, where hands reach, where no one is left behind when the water rises or the clock runs fast.